Hello, I'm Sarah Farnsworth. As an ABC reporter in Melbourne, I've covered many high-profile court cases, but one of the most haunting involved the disappearance of teenage girl Prue Bird. Prue's mother Jenny has grappled with one question: were the criminal connections of her own family somehow related to her daughter's abduction? For the first time, everybody involved in this astonishing crime saga tells their stories.
I can remember everything about that day. It started like any other day. It was summertime and we were going to the local bars for the afternoon. I opened Prue's bedroom door. It was 1 o'clock. Prue was sound asleep and you didn't wake Prue up. The hell would break loose. And I thought, look, she knows where I am and she'll ring me at the bars.
She heated up some cream corn, which was her favourite food. And for Prue, she wouldn't go anywhere until she'd finished eating. Prue loved to eat, loved her food.
We stayed at the bars till closing time, which was 6 o'clock we left. I seen Prue meal on the table and it hadn't been touched. Nothing had been eaten off it. No note in the kitchen. And as all as a bugger as Prue was, we did leave notes.
All the clothes were still there, all the money was still there, like her pocket money and stuff.
Jenny made a phone call to Prue's friend to see whether or not Prue was with her.
I was starting to feel uneasy, but pushing that uneasiness away. But I hadn't reached her friend. And I kept thinking, no, she's with her friend. I finally got her about 9:30 it was that night.
And I said no, I hadn't seen Prue that day. We hadn't communicated because I'd been at my nan's all day.
I just knew from that moment, oh my God, my little girl's in trouble somewhere.
It's like she's just vanished from the face of the earth.
She was her little girl, and she was here on this earth, but she was taken away. She wants to know why.
If you're going to try and solve the problem with what happened to Prue Bird and why it happened, I think you've got to go back to the Russell Street bombing, where it all started.
The Russell Street bombing, by contrast with Prue Bird's disappearance, was a massive story. One of the biggest domestic stories in Australian history.
Police are still checking areas of the city for more car bombs after the series of explosions which rocked the area around Russell Street Police Complex at lunchtime.
It was Easter Thursday. The bomb went off at about 1 o'clock.
With the Russell Street bombing, we were being hunted, a group of people who proactively targeted the police and exploded this car in front of the police station.
There were more shocks in store.
The atmosphere was, what the hell's going on here? You know, there's glass out of the windows in the building and there was people running around everywhere, people injured.
19 people were hurt, 3 of them seriously, and 2 of those are police officers.
What's happened this afternoon puts us right in the forefront of terrorism, as we've seen in other parts of the world.
Nobody could believe that somebody would do such a thing. And then the biggest problem was, who was it?
When I first heard about the Russell Street bombing, I never thought for a second that that would have touched my life in any way, shape or form.
Policewoman Angela Taylor's still in a critical condition with burns to 60% of her body.
Soon after the Russell Street bombing, my mum and Paul were arrested and taken in for questioning. And I thought, oh my God, my mum. I grew up in West Brunswick, in the commission flats. Yeah, remember, Mrs Johnson lived there. There used to be a sign up there called Gron Place, the town too tough to die. And this was all concrete. At home wasn't always happy. There were a lot of fights.
My first husband, Jim, I was only 13 when I met him. But I already had an eye for something that looked good.
I'm the oldest, and Mum was 16 when she had me. She was 17 when she had my brother, James.
10 years later, I came along, and then my younger brother as well.
That was our bedroom, just above the balcony. Do you remember that?
We learned really quick in the house not to make Mum angry, because when she was angry, she would become violent.
Remember fights?
Yeah, lots of fights. Lots of screaming.
I can imagine how scared they were. A few times I used to tell the kids, you know, go and stay at your friend's for the night, because I know we're going to have a big argument.
She used to blame it all on Dad and say it was the drinking and no money. When she went off, everyone was afraid. Everybody.
He came home one night. He was drunk as, and the clock wasn't working. Something wrong with the clock. And he was going to fix it, and I said, no, do it tomorrow when you're sober.
He says, I want to look at the clock. And we had soup in front of us. And she said, you want the effing clock? I'll give you the effing clock. And she took the clock and she smashed the clock over my father's head. And the glass went everywhere.
And I said, eat that dinner. So he's still eating it and picking the glass out.
You had that vicious side as Mum, and then you had that side of her. The mental manipulation was, I depend on you. You're my firstborn. You're the only one I can depend upon. You know, so growing up, that's what it was about.
It was all, don't upset Mum, don't hurt Mum. But that was it was just like it was carried on from when we were kids.
I think inside my house I didn't feel safe in my own home. I knew when I was able to, I was going to be gone. I was 17 and I'd had a lovely boyfriend, had a job, and we moved in together into a flat, and it was great. I had Prue on Terry's birthday, so it was a nice birthday surprise. I thought no one else in the world had done this. And I remember looking at her and thinking, oh my God, look what I've done. This baby was going to love me. And nobody could take that away. Terry was killed in a car accident. Prue had turned 1 and he just turned 25. It was pretty sad. A couple of years later, I met Benny, and we had the 2 children, Amanda and Adam, and Benny adopted Prue. During this time, Mum had met Paul Hetzel.
Her Majesty's Prison, Pentridge, has loomed on the outskirts of Melbourne for over 100 years.
My name is Paul Hetzel. I'm serving 22.5-year sentence for armed robbery and attempted murder.
I first met Paul when I was going to visit somebody else in prison, and it just developed as a friendship.
And she was walking past the yard and I gave her a wolf whistle and I said, geez, love, I'd like to, you know, what to you? And I got a telegram back that afternoon saying she'd like to do the same to me.
Paul Hetzel had done a lot of time. He's cunning. He knows the ropes. And he knows how to try and use people to his best advantage. And Paul was for Paul. No worries about that.
I educated myself to the profession of armed robbery. I was taught how to blow safes, this is theoretically.
He had an infectious smile.
Best way to rob banks, payrolls, etc.
And his eyes are blue, but they changed blue.
So I escaped on this sentence, and when I got out, I put all this into action.
Always happy, bit mad.
Well, during this period I was out, I actually committed a number of armed robberies.
That was all an attraction to me, yeah. And somebody that talked to me.
Yeah, she was in love like a school child, like a teenager. We were all frightened of him, but she said to us, please don't make me choose. I love you both. We just wanted Mum to be happy. Look, I don't blame my mother for leaving my father. I don't, but she went from the frying pan to the fat in a huge way.
My name is Stanley Brian Taylor and I'm serving 21 and a half years for robbery under arms.
Stan Taylor was a career criminal. He'd already served over 20 years in jail.
Well, I do most of the electrical repairs.
Stan Taylor and myself, we were the best of friends in jail. His word was God. What he said went. Very violent. No one went against him in jail.
When Paul got out of jail, Mum was waiting for him, obviously. They moved around quite a bit. Then come back and lived in rural Victoria, on and off in different places.
Stan, he got out earlier than I, and wasn't until about 12 months or 18 months after I got out that the friendship resumed. It was after that we started doing armed robberies. I think I was too weak to say no. I didn't want to lose face. Basically, I saw it as an opportunity to making money also. I only knew one thing, that was crime. So it was very easy for me to step back into it.
Stan had his boys, he used to call them, Craig Minot and Rodney Minot. They were brothers, Standover boys.
Craig was a big man, about 26, 27 stone, and a pretty vicious fella. Rodney Minogue, be half the size of Craig and the younger brother, so I think he looked up to the older brother. And those armed robberies started off in country hotels, and they were pretty vicious armed robberies. They seemed to get more violent as they went. And then they graduated to banks.
They instilled terror from the word go. Extremely violent, smashing people over the heads with guns, kicking them, you name it. You get them scared, they'll do as they're told.
We didn't know that he'd done armed robberies. We didn't know anything about him. We only ever have known what our mother has wanted us to know about Paul. I had my suspicions, I'm not silly. They had money and they didn't work. But we never asked why, what. We just didn't ask. Prue was beautiful. She was a dear little girl. She loved my mum and she loved Paul. Mum would just say, oh, can I take Prue for 2 weeks?
She was always wanting to be with us. I adored her.
I like the kids to have a relationship with their grandparents too. I think it's great, and I thought she'd be okay there.
Stan and Rodney and Craig, they saw it when she was up at our place because they were always around.
I didn't see a problem with it because we grew up with a code of conduct in those days that you didn't hurt women or children.
They could see all that. They could see the love that was there.
We believed that because Prue was her granddaughter, that she was safe up there.
Came a stage where I wanted to leave, and I didn't know how to extricate myself. So I cut myself off from Taylor to a degree, and from then on, we just never spoke much until after the bombing. And Taylor was always talking about wanting to blow Russell Street up, wanting to load a car with gelignite and drive it under Russell Street. But he'd been talking about that since, you know, when he was in jail. Crims don't like cops, and I thought that was all it was. You know, just a general dislike, but apparently it went deeper than that.
The first blast occurred in a car parked outside the main entrance to the Russell Street police station. There was no warning.
Well, as you've heard on the news, Melbourne was rocked by a series of bomb blasts this afternoon.
Paul and I were going with Gabrielle to have dinner. That's them. You know, we just looked at each other. That's them.
And it wasn't until later on that night when we got home that they clued me in as to what had happened and how we have to be careful now.
And then the next day, Taylor came around to our place and told us in detail what happened. I was aghast. I thought, you bloody idiot, why tell people?
The police were under enormous pressure to solve this, not just because it was a massive crime, but because it was a massive crime aimed at the police.
After hovering near death for 25 days, the Melbourne policewoman who suffered horrific burns in the Russell Street bombing has died.
Today, senior police said Constable Taylor's death made them all the more determined to catch the bomber.
Paul Hetzel, and to some degree Julie, are in an invidious position. They're caught between a rock and a hard place because they know the bombers intimately, and they know that they could be drawn in to any subsequent investigation and arrest.
Julie and Paul told us that after the bombing, they were all living in Birchip, and Craig came into the house one day, and little Prue, who was then 7, I think, 6 or 7, she was asleep in another room.
Craig said to me, he was warning me off going to the police about what we knew of the bombing, what they'd told us. And he said to me that, how would you like something to happen to your sweet little granddaughter? I didn't want anything to happen. I said, I won't speak, I won't do anything. We're not doing anything.
Well, Craig Minogue's denied making those threats, but the Hetzels say that he did make the threats, and I believe them.
And we took that as a serious threat. But at the same token, they got caught the next day.
Got some police up and raided Birchip, where we got Stan Taylor.
First to face court this morning was 23-year-old Craig William Minogue.
We arrested the Minogue brothers at a motel in Swan Hill.
Next, his 20-year-old brother was in court. Police were granted an application to keep him in custody for another 6 hours for questioning over his alleged role in the bombing.
We got information that Paul had been involved in the armed robberies. We didn't know if he'd been involved in the bombing, but we wanted to get hold of him and have a talk to him. And he was arrested on the highway a few days after that and brought in for questioning.
When Paul got arrested, my mum also did, but she wasn't charged with anything and was released that night.
I weighed up the situation very simply. Either I shut up and say nothing and get charged with murder of a policewoman and a bombing I didn't commit, I wouldn't see daylight. As simple as that.
There would have been a race to see who would inform first, and Hetzel got in first, and he gave information to the police about the others. because he was in a position to know what they'd been up to.
And he was able to tell us who did what, but if we had any inkling at all that Paul was involved in the bombing, he would have been charged with it. But we couldn't put him at the scene, or nobody else put him at the scene on the day.
One of the things that I spoke to the barrister was I'd have to be assured of some sort of safety.
Paul Kurt Hetzel's evidence in the committal and the Supreme Court was what you would call excellent.
I psyched myself up. I'd walk into the court, get up in the dock. I would look at His Honour and then look across at the jury, and I'd keep my gaze on the jury. I didn't look at them at all.
According to Hetzel's evidence, Stanley Taylor, Craig and Rodney Minogue all admitted involvement in the bombing.
They weren't very happy with him at all. Very filthy, no worries about that.
We were told not to come to the trial because people could follow us and kill us, so we didn't go. You know, I wish I'd never heard the name Paul Hetzel in my life. And I don't want to be associated with the Russell Street bombing, and I am, and it's not who I am, and I hated that people were hurt and killed, and I'm so sorry for them.
Today's verdict was the culmination of one of Victoria's longest criminal trials, almost 5 months.
Stan Taylor goes down. Craig Minogue goes down, the older brother.
At the trial, Rodney Minogue was convicted of being accessory to the bombing, but he was acquitted on appeal. But he did serve time for the armed robberies that he committed.
Mum and Paul went into witness protection.
We virtually had to go into hiding, and to go into hiding properly, you had to cut yourself off from everybody. You couldn't let anyone know where you were.
I'd have rather never been in witness protection. Ever. You think somebody's going to be there to protect you? They're not. You're still left on your own.
I didn't get time to think, I don't think, about the reality of it all. Couldn't think about my own children and our own lives because we were still worried about her life and what was happening to her. And, you know, poor Mum. She's in witness protection.
She was more worried for Mum. She was still wanting to, protect Mum.
I get really mad at myself for it now because I didn't think of the danger. Not for a minute. And I should have. Then the police moved us into another area because there were threats made against us.
Julie Hetzel's daughter has also been forced to change her identity and move to a safe house.
We were told to use a different name. Nothing was done legally or professionally, so it was very hard. It was, it was very scary.
What impact did it have on your children?
They had nightmares for 1.5 years.
And what was the problem for them?
Trying to get their fears out that we couldn't protect them if anybody come to hurt them.
I first met Jenny Bird, Prue and her other 2 younger children in 1991.
I always have cried in the car. Yeah, that's my little place to have a good cry.
Jenny felt that as a mother she wasn't able to protect them the way she wanted to, and that was really hurting her. And so she was concerned about her children's well-being and having to live under this cloud.
I met Prue when I was around 11. She had a really bubbly, friendly personality, and I was a bit of a follower. She was a leader. We were at her place and there was a knock at the door. Prue went to the door and I heard someone say, "Is that Daniel's car?" Prue said no, and he said, "Are you sure?" Prue said yes, and shut the door. When she came back, she was white and she said, "Oh, that guy was really weird. That was really weird." After I left Prue's house, I was walking down Bindi Street and a man drove past and he waved at me and then he kept going. He then turned around and started driving at my walking pace. Just smiling, waving and staring. That's when alarm bells rang, I guess. By that stage, I was running and I went to a girlfriend's house. When I got home, I gave Prue a ring and asked her what the man at the door looked like. And we described him to each other. And between each other, we'd worked out that it was actually the same person.
In the last 1 or 2 visits, Prue had stated to one of my colleagues that she had been followed by a car 2 or 3 times, and it was the same car and it was in the street near her home. I talked to Prue about it also, and the concern was, is she imagining things? Is her mental state all right? She wasn't. Her mental state was fine. And that was the last session I saw Prue alive.
There was a witness who had seen Prue being driven away from her house in the back seat of a blue car.
I thought, oh dear God, this is a payback.
You know, I was the catalyst. If I wasn't involved with those people, she'd be alive today, and so would the young policewoman.
I was just thinking, why isn't anyone taking this serious? They made me feel like I was a bad mother, a bad person.
There was a person in the paper that they suspected of Prue's murder.
You know, and I thought, Jesus, mate, if you'd done the murder, at least tell them where the body is.
I think it's my fault that she's not here, and it's hard to live with. Very hard to live with, because it was somebody I loved so much.
She knew who she was hanging out with. She should have stayed away from us all. I'll never forgive her.
Hello, I'm Sarah Farnsworth, a reporter with the ABC in Melbourne. Tonight we continue the story of the disappearance 22 years ago of Victorian teenager Prue Bird. Her mother Jenny suspected Prue's abduction might be payback linked to a notorious attack on Victoria Police. Tonight, Jenny's quest for answers uncovers some unexpected truths. But first, a recap.
My name is Paul Hetzel. I'm serving a 22.5-year sentence for armed robbery and attempted murder.
I first met Paul when I was going to visit somebody else in prison.
Yeah, she was in love like a schoolchild, like a teenager. Prue was beautiful. She was a dear little girl. Mum would just say, oh, can I take Prue for 2 weeks?
The Russell Street bombing was a massive story.
The Melbourne policewoman who suffered horrific burns in the Russell Street bombing has died.
And then the next day, Taylor told us in detail what happened. I was aghast. I thought, you bloody idiot, why tell people?
Craig said to me, He was warning me off going to the police about what we knew of the bombing. And he said to me, how would you like something to happen to your sweet little granddaughter?
There would have been a race to see who would inform first, and Hetzel got in first. Stan Taylor goes down. Craig Minogue goes down, the older brother.
Rodney Minogue was acquitted on appeal.
Mum and Paul went into witness protection. I get really mad at myself because I didn't think of the danger, and I should have.
Prue had been followed by a car in the street near her home, and that was the last session I saw Prue alive.
I opened Prue's bedroom door. I just knew from that moment, oh my God, my little girl's in trouble somewhere. After Prue went missing, it was a nightmare of a ride from there on in. Because no one had seen her, I knew that she was in danger. Whatever had happened to Prue, it was something bad. The next morning, missing persons come out and question me and look through Prue's room and through her stuff. And they said, oh, you know, she's a teenager. All teenagers do these things, and I was saying she wouldn't run away. She'd never run away before.
And the police just wouldn't listen to us. All of her friends, family, everyone's telling the police that this kid would not have run away.
I always thought Prue was alive first, you know, being held. I remember I was laying in the back room and I was crying, and then I could feel someone sit on my bed. And I remember thinking, oh my God, she's gone. I knew she wasn't coming home. I knew that Prue was dead.
When they look at it next day, a policewoman there who's fairly acute realised the significance of the connection between Prue Bird and the Russell Street bombers. But at this point we had this great dilemma. There's no evidence of a crime, there's no evidence of a homicide.
I thought it was the Russell Street, but then I had all the police telling me that it wouldn't be the Russell Street. They weren't serious about it. I was just so confused that I didn't know whether I was coming or going, as all I knew was, hey, my little girl's gone, someone do something.
Got a phone call in the early hours of the morning, and I remember I was quite curt over the phone, saying, well, what in the hell do you expect us to do? We're the other side of the country.
I didn't think that at all that anything would have gone wrong. Just that she just didn't come home. And Jenny's saying to me on the phone, Mum, I know, she's dead, I know. I said, Jenny, don't be so stupid. She could be anywhere.
She didn't arrive down till sometime the next week after. She didn't cry, not one tear. She come in like she was a police interviewing me, not my mother. Started taking notes about what time I left the house, where was Izzy. When Prue disappeared, Izzy was my partner at the time, and we'd been together about 2 years. Prue was angry that I wasn't with her dad. I don't think it would have mattered whether Izzy had been a woman or a man. I think it would have been the same.
The family were very anxious about the Russell Street police bombing, and they were still very scared. Prue too was very anxious still about safety issues and fear about reprisals.
She was having counselling, and we were still having behavioural problems, so I said to Izzy, look, you move out. Maybe that might be better for Prue. Might be all it is. We were going to still see each other at that time, but not at home, outside the home. Mum was really gunning from the very beginning that Izzy would have hurt Prue.
You've tried to put the blame everywhere else. You don't want the blame here. I didn't want that blame on my conscience. I didn't want to accept that responsibility.
I think it was all just to take it away from them. You know, if it involved the Russell Street bombing, then it involved them.
By the time I got there, she'd been missing for about 7 weeks. Jenny and her partner would have been on top of my list of potential suspects. There was probably a bit of prejudice there. Jenny was living in a same-sex relationship with another woman.
Hi, Jenny.
Hello, Chris.
How you going?
Then that judgment was probably clouded further by the fact that Jenny was from a criminal family. And I assessed her character that she was genuine. I've got the first day that we first met was the 26th of March in 1992.
Prue's 14th birthday.
Jenny struck me as being the salt of the earth type person. She was not sophisticated, she was not complicated. Well, Izzy was fairly quick for us to discount that because really Izzy was exonerated. There was no evidence that supported the fact that Izzy was involved in Prue's disappearance.
Chris Jones was working on the case, and for me it didn't seem to be going anywhere. I got very frustrated, so I started doing poster work and my own little bits of investigation, contacting media, just to try and get it moved on. I followed up any lead that I thought would help find Prue.
You never stop looking, never ever.
So we went into Flinders Street Station. We went and spoke to street kids. Every little rumour that I heard, I followed up on. I know Chris Jones at the time was trying his hardest to get it moved up to homicide, and he was trying his best, and even he was getting frustrated.
There was this elephant in the room, and the elephant in the room was the fact that she was a granddaughter of Julie and Paul Hetzel, and that there had been a specific threat referring to her by one of the Russell Street bombers. I went up and briefed the officer in charge of the homicide squad about Prue Bird's case. Now, if Prue were a victim of a payback, then there must have been other people involved on the outside who organised it and carried it out, if that was the case. I said at the time, you know, this is beyond us. I do not have the personnel or the resources to properly investigate this case. There are too many good crooks in there. There are too many scenarios.
Homicide should have come in. They would have known by her name the relationship to Hetzel. I'm not a detective, you know, but nothing was done.
Didn't seem to make the grade for putting more resources into it. The end result of it was I was to keep working on it and to let them know if I came up with anything.
Were you surprised?
I was surprised, yes, yeah, because this was not just a crime against a 13-year-old girl. If the people involved in the Russell Street bombing were involved, again, they were thumbing their nose at authority by saying, well, we can do what we like. You can't stop us.
Jenny and Prue Bird were from the wrong house, the wrong street, the wrong suburb, the wrong side of the tracks. They were from a family that had criminal connections. If it had been the Lord Mayor's daughter who'd disappeared from the gates of a grammar school somewhere on the other side of the river, that there would have been quite a different reaction, yes, there's no doubt.
Time went by, like I knew Mum and Paul were saying things to police that weren't true. And I started to think, you know, did Paul have something to do with Prue's disappearance? And I just didn't know.
And I said to her, well, they're not nice people. Maybe we should talk to the police about them.
So we were raided and there was an umpteen dozen police on horses and with probes and everything going over the property to see if Prue's body was on our property, which of course it wasn't.
There were some strange rumours going around that I killed the child and cut her up in little pieces and burnt her in my furnace. My furnace.
But there's where all the accusations, and that puts a rift to there. I think, why keep doing this? Because it's not true. We've had nothing to do with that, with actually killing Prue.
Mum had called my sister and she was absolutely livid. She was livid. How dare we accuse Paul?
I remember ringing Chris Jones and saying, what the hell's going on now? And he said, can you come in? And that's when she'd written a letter to say that Izzy would have murdered Prue and I would have known about it.
I thought Jenny could have been blinded by Izzy. She trusted Izzy and she wouldn't think Izzy would do it.
I couldn't believe it. I wanted to see it in my mum's own handwriting.
Jenny might be angry over that letter her mother wrote to the police, but Jenny maligned us, something shocking. So, you know, she's got no right to talk about that particular letter.
I was wrong, and I apologise, Izzy. Sort of.
Yeah, that was probably the final moment that I made the decision never to have her in my life ever again. Never, ever again. You know, I was scared to be a mum because I thought I'd failed terribly at Prue.
She had no money, nowhere to go. She wasn't talking to her mum. And she came to live with me.
Sometimes I was slipping, you know, and Helen would bring me back and, you know, keep me going.
I really don't know how she survived. At the core was still her other two children, and they needed her, and she needed to keep going despite her heart breaking.
My son made me a birthday card probably about a year after Prue had been missing, and I thought, oh my God, this is how my children see me. You know, and I thought that was pretty sad. So I thought, you know, you have to pick yourself up from here, Jen. I never stopped trying to work out ways to do something. Then about 16 years went by and I seen a reward offered for another case.
Victoria Police are offering a $1 million reward for the missing link in one of the state's longest-running murder investigations. They also say...
I found out that Elizabeth Memory had had a $1 million reward offered, so I rang and I said, well, you know, the Memory's got $1 million for Elizabeth. I'd like $1 million for Prudence. And he said, you take 500 or you get nothing. So I took the 500.
A $100,000 reward was posted 8 years ago. It's now hoped the increase to $500,000 will lead to a breakthrough.
They give me hope that, you know, maybe that money will make somebody talk. Out of the reward for the $500,000, eventually Camilleri's name came out.
Les Camilleri, in jail for the Beaker case, starts saying things to people that he'd been involved in a murder of another girl. He mentions this to, I think, a fellow criminal. He mentions something over a telephone to a relative. And eventually, police go and talk to him.
Look, I'm admitting to the fact that Prue's death's my fault. Yeah. I admit that. I admit that I'm responsible.
It was completely out of the blue. I remember thinking, what's going on here? Has he been put up by others, or is it in fact a lie? Even though I've met him on a number of occasions, I still don't know him. I don't know what makes him tick. As I said, I knew very little before about him, other than obviously the Bega case.
He and another man called Beckett were the guys that picked up the two girls at Bega and kept them in the car for many, many hours and later killed them. An evil killer, rapist and everything else.
This is a tape recommencement of interview between Detective Sergeant Greg Fisher and Les Camilleri.
I thought, oh my God, is this someone just lying or making it up that he killed Prudence? Because you hear of prisoners doing that. And I couldn't really connect the dots to him at all.
It did make me wonder what happened to Prue, especially when I saw what happened to the other girls. But my mind can't go that far. It's too upsetting.
You admit to being responsible for the crime, but you're saying that you've done it by yourself, is that right?
Yeah, I'm saying that they have nothing to do with it.
We had this strange one-legged stool where Camilleri is admitting to abducting a teenage girl and strangling her, but not explaining why he did, not explaining if other people had asked him to help them do this for any reason.
So when you've taken Prue to where you've buried her or placed her on the ground, was she pretty much in the state that you picked her up, in a sense of clothing?
I think it's a load of crap. There's a story. I didn't believe his account at all. You know, he said he grabbed Prudence off the street. His school bag was missing. Prue would definitely not walk in the street on the weekend with her school bag. That would be very uncool.
Well, the problem that police had is they had a confession from Camilleri, but because of his criminal background, he has major credibility issues. So what they had to do is they had to go away and find some sort of corroboration or something to back their case up. In the end, they built their case largely on 3 witnesses.
When the Camilleri story breaks in 2009, there are photographs of him published in the newspapers.
I was actually on holidays, Christmas holidays. I went to Dad's place and I had a look in the paper and I was shocked to see that that was the same man in the car that day. Straight away I got that sick feeling, like I was 13 again on the street. It was an instant reaction when I saw it.
That was probably the first real strong breakthrough. We had someone who could put Camilleri in Victoria in early 1992.
The evidence of witness L was particularly important to police because it showed that Camilleri was not acting alone like he claimed and that there may have been an element of planning involved. Witness L told police that she was walking along Prue Bird Street on that Sunday. Out the front of Prue Bird's house, she saw 2 cars, one of them was blue, and there were 3 men.
She saw Prue in the car, banging on the windows thinking she was waving to her, but then she's got the back window, help me, help me.
She must have been sitting on this for a long time and was either too scared to come forward or didn't think that her evidence would matter. Witness K's evidence was important because it spoke of possible payback, that Camilleri was doing it for someone else, on behalf of someone else, with someone else.
Camilleri used to come down to Melbourne to visit a very violent drug dealer called McConville, who's now dead, which is a good thing. They had a strong association.
Do you know a Mark McConville?
A Mark?
McConville.
Not. Not by sight, no. Not by name, but maybe by sight.
Witness K at that time was living with Mark McConville. Witness K and Camilleri and Mark McConville went out to Glenroy on a number of occasions with a view of trying to locate Prue Bird, and she talks about a payback, so which obviously leads investigators to think that it's a payback for the Russell Street bombing.
The Russell Street link suddenly had new life. The big question is, how does Camilleri link to the Russell Street bombers? And the answer to that is by degrees of separation. Camilleri used to come south, he used to meet McConville. It turns out, we believe, the police believe, that McConville was an associate of one of the Russell Street crew, that he knew a very close associate of the Russell Street bombers.
There's a fair bit of planning involved in this crime. I was of the belief that Prue's disappearance was a payback for the Russell Street bombing.
I've got no doubt there's a connection. There's a connection. There's certain people did certain time together in a certain division in prison that were involved in this, and there's an association there.
43-year-old Leslie Camilleri today pleaded guilty to the murder of 13-year-old Prue Bird. Police originally linked the teenager's abduction to the Russell Street bombings.
But today, prosecutors told the judge they will no longer allege that payback was the motive in Prue Bird's murder, although no further explanation was given as to why the case against Camilleri has changed.
The Russell Street bombing link was dropped for a couple of reasons, I think. First of all, Camilleri was never going to plead guilty if that was going to be pushed, because that would have meant that he was potentially implicating other people.
Her mother, Jenny Bird, had little to say as she left court.
Awful as always.
The prosecution simply couldn't prove it. There's a difference between knowing something, being able to prove it, and then being able to prove it to the required standard in court.
And I asked why, and they said because Camilleri won't plead guilty and we don't think we've got enough to take it over the line. That was it, and that was the end of that.
Jenny was asked by the prosecution to have a victim impact statement prepared prior to a sentencing by the judge.
And I felt like that was my last hope, you know, to find out anything about Prudence. I was shaking like a leaf all over. But I thought, you know, I asked the judge, could I address him and not her, because I thought, this is for you. Les, you have shown me no remorse. I'm left hopeless, empty, overwhelmed. How can I describe 20 years of pain? I don't know who to trust. I'm scared to drive. I'm scared of just so much. I live a life of silence and fear. When I was saying it, I thought I saw a reaction in him. I pray every night that you will give me my little girl back so I can bury her. Please, Les, listen. I don't think bad of you. I just want my little girl back. I was hoping that there was something inside that soul that would just say, yeah, let's give her back. There was nothing.
"20 years on, and the man who killed the 13-year-old has been sentenced to 28 years jail. The judge gave Camilleri a discount because he pleaded guilty, but it's academic. He's already serving life with no parole.
Over 2 decades, I'm totally exhausted. I'm glad of the outcome. I have more strength in me than I thought that I knew, because I had to fight for my daughter and I'm Prue's voice, and I take strength in that.
There's an acknowledgement that things could have been done better. I apologise to Jenny for not being able to push it as hard as I could.
Jenny Bird, who's here at the front, she's the mum of Prue Bird, who I'll talk about. It probably should have been acted on by at least detectives from the outset, the homicide squad or other members from wherever. Had have got onto it straight away with resources, then there might have been a different outcome.
My advice to police is, you know, sort of, I was judged harshly from who I was born to. Try not to have that tunnel vision. You know, I'm not my mother.
It's been extremely tough. Basically, her health's just deteriorated to the point now where she's virtually crippled up. I can't put it into words how tough it's been. She's lost the whole family and lost the apple of her eye.
I think it's my fault that she's not here. She's in a safe place now, and it's hard to live with. Very hard to live with, because it was somebody I loved so much. Still do. And Jen, I hope you get home right.
You know, I was the catalyst. If I wasn't involved with those people, she'd be alive today, and so would the young policewoman.
We didn't have to matter to Paul. We didn't have to matter. We should have mattered to her. We were her children. Prue was her granddaughter. She knew who Paul was. She knew who she was hanging out with. She should have stayed away from us all. That's the bottom line. Yeah, I blame her 100%.
She's not a doormat for people anymore. She's able to say what she thinks. There's no bad people in her life. And I think she's at peace with herself. She is who she is.
I like to sit outside sometimes and look up to the sky and think that there's a heaven above the clouds, and that, you know, Prue's up there and it's beautiful and she's happy, and one day I'll see her again.
I don't want you thinking I'm unhappy. What is closer to the truth? That if I lived till I was 102, I just don't think